Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
Grieving the loss of a loved one can be hard, but if you've got family and friends around, it helps. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and pick their brain about their current projects, influences, how they got started, all sorts of fun stuff in a very light and conversational way as we possibly can, because that's how we do it over here. And if you've been enjoying the podcast, and we certainly hope that you do, we'd recommend that you give us a subscribe over at Apple, over at Spotify, or you can find every single one of our episodes archived over at our YouTube channel. Also, if you'd like to check us out on social media, either on the Facebook, on the Twitter, or on the Instagram, that'd be great. Either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of updates. And finally, and most importantly, I think, visit us over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, where we have all sorts of fun movie news, reviews, other stuff going on with our hardworking team, and they'd really appreciate it, and so would I. But on today's episode, or this episode, I would say today's episode, don't I? We are talking with the writer and director of the film Love, Sarah. It's a cute little rom-com that actually sort of bucks convention and really sort of tells a fun story, but tells it in a very unique way. And it's from director Eliza Schroeder, who, yes, she was also a co-writer on the film. And it's basically it's the kind of film we've seen before, but a young woman who wishes to fulfill her mother's dream of opening her own bakery in Notting Hill, London. And to do this, she has to sort of enlist the help of some old friends, as well as her grandmother, who is a little bit estranged. And it's about how they're all coming together and sort of finding love and kind of finding happiness in the wake of the loss of Sarah. And we sat down with Elsa, who was an absolute delight, and we talked a little bit about the inspiration for the film, how she got everyone involved, and just sort of getting into the thick of movie making, because it came together pretty fast, and it's a delightful little film that, again, kind of pushes the boundaries of the convention that you'd expect in romantic comedies, and it really has a bunch of interesting, well-layered characters that you quickly get behind from minute one. And hope you enjoy our talk with Elsa, because I know I did. All right. Well, I mean, obviously, just thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate this.
Pleasure.
Now, I mean, first off, I love the movie. And I mean, I think what I really enjoyed about it is that it's a romantic comedy, but it's not a movie that's trying to lean into sort of the tropes and the expectations of the genre. In fact, it's actually trying to go the other way. And I'm kind of curious, what was the initial inspiration for the story?
So, I mean, the initial inspiration was, I guess, I always wanted to tell a story of about three very different women of different generations who are all sort of have different characteristics, but yet they're all sort of very headstrong. So I wanted to see what happens if you bring these three estranged women together and sort of get them to find their way back together. And I didn't want to make it cliche, and I didn't want to make it a typical sort of romantic comedy. I always wanted to. It was always my goal to give it some depth and some meaning.
Oh no, absolutely. And I mean, it's one of those things where you watch it, and I mean, there's layers to the character. And I mean, I was talking with Rupert the other day, and I was just struck by just his character has layers, because in this genre, a lot of times it will focus on the relationship between the female characters, but the man will be sort of the attractive prop, as it were, instead of being sort of a meaningful character. How important was it just to be able to put something together where really it was very dynamically fleshed out, because it wasn't just tropes, it was people.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, to a big extent also, that it was amazingly helpful to have these wonderful actors, sort of bring their own shape to the characters. And I didn't have much time with Rupert to prepare with, but we instantly hit it off, and we really got on, and we all of us became a really strong team. And I think the biggest thing for me, the biggest achievement for me, was that all my lead actors were really trusting me, and they were they were sort of shaping a team with me, and that allowed us to explore to just explore each and every character, and keep make sure that they're as deep as possible. And with Matthew, I think it was always really important that he isn't just a prop, but he has, despite the fact that we don't see him as much on screen as I would have liked to see him. If I could have made the film, sort of 2 hours long or 2.5 hours long, then we could have explored much more. But I wanted him to not be shallow, and he helped me do that.
Now, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, this is your first, not your first film, but your first narrative feature, because you've done some shorts and documentaries beforehand.
Yeah.
Now, walk me through sort of that experience, because I've got to imagine it's a little different sort of walking onto a set shooting a feature, as opposed to sort of documentary film or a short where it's either a team or it's something you did on a weekend kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such it's a much longer, obviously it's a much longer shoot to start with, and then much more preparation, much more shooting time, and I will never forget how the first week was the most difficult week in the entire shoot, because we had to start with literally the first day of filming was the entire cast stood there asking me what to do, and we were starting sort of midway through the film, and then worked our way backwards, and it was really, I mean, it was such a challenge, but I loved it so much, and it just requires all your attention and focus and concentration, but I love what I do. So it was a pleasure, and it was an amazing learning curve to just never underestimate how much you need to prepare, how much you need to know your own script, how much you need to be ready to engage in a team spirit, and at the same time still not forget the vision that you want to get across.
For sure. No, and I mean, it really comes across, and I mean, especially through the dynamics of casting as well. And I mean, I've got to imagine when you're going through trying to cast parts for this, I imagine Celia was probably on a short list of a dream wish list that you would hope you would get.
Totally. We were so extremely excited when she said yes. And because somehow we had always developed the character really with her in mind. And she brought such a spirit to she just brought it. She has she switches on the lights, and she somehow gets everyone to come on board and jump on the bandwagon. And she is also, of course I could learn from her experience, but at the same time, again, she would very much listen to my thoughts, and she wouldn't, just because I was a young director, it wouldn't be the case that I would have to prove myself to her, but she would, just be a great team partner.
Is there anything in this entire process of making this particular film that you learned that maybe you wouldn't have expected to learn?
That I wouldn't have expected to learn. I mean, I think in general, I've learned a great deal, and obviously you always make mistakes along the way. And I'm just listening to this really interesting audiobook about directing actors, and I guess I was always very prepared about I would always know very, very well technically what I wanted to do, and visually, and with the camera work, and I would have a good sense, I think, for people, but I wouldn't have a wide range of experience to direct this kind of caliber of actors. So I guess what I've really learned is the psychology that is behind directing actors, and that you can only learn by doing it and by making mistakes and sort of improving. And I guess the next time around I would have learned that perhaps a little bit more prep time would help me to push things even further, and to optimize them, because you need to really creep into people's head to know how they function, each one of them.
For sure. No, absolutely. Now, I'm kind of curious, thinking back, what got you into this business? Was there like a piece of work or a movie or even a moment in your life where you went, okay, I got to be a storyteller?
So already when I was a little girl, around 7 or something, I was drawing flip books, and I was always writing little short stories. I was always interested in storytelling, but then I went on to study literature and sort of cultural studies. But I was working as a photographer on the side, just sort of freelance. And then suddenly, and I was always sort of battling with myself, I want to tell stories, but, I want to be visual, but I also want to be lyrical. And, how can I combine these two? And I guess, I was then, at some point, I woke up and said, I need to direct. I just need to make films. And, everyone around me said, you're crazy. How do you want to do that? And I remember I was just, joining forces with a dear friend of mine back in the day, and we were just starting to make short films and literally just learning by doing. And I will never forget these days. We were smoking one cigarette after the next, sitting in our living room, sort of, trying to figure out how to do the next film. It was really nice.
Did the actors do their own baking, or did you have someone in to help?
So they did their own sort of in terms of what you see on screen. I had this hilarious exchange of phone calls and emails with Matthew, like with Rupert beforehand, and I was asking him, can you bake? Can you do you know how to how to do it? And he's like, yeah, no, sure, I'm gonna and I sent him lots of links, and I said, let's talk, and shall I get you some lessons? And he said, no, darling, I'm fine. And I was a bit like, oh, I was a bit worried that he can really pull it off, but he did, and he did his little practice, and we rehearsed a little bit together. So everything you see in terms of baking, what they do in the kitchen is actually them doing it, and they did it confidently. But of course, the results, so the actual bakes, we got help from Otto Lengi and lots of other sort of local bakeries who kindly helped us out to make it as rich as possible in terms of where they would come from and what they would look like and everything.
Is there a dream project for you going forward? Like, is there sort of one piece or one kind of genre or an idea that you'd love to explore? Because, I mean, especially with this film, I mean, I love just how it goes into all their relationships with Sarah, and it's love Sarah, because it's all how they're dealing with the loss, but how they're moving on and how they're interacting and sort of finding love with each other and with other people. Like, I'm kind of curious, are there any other ideas, not maybe not just in this genre, but in other genres that you'd like to explore?
Yes, I really want to direct a thriller. So I'm working on a thriller because I just think a female directed thriller is probably going to be hopefully something interesting. And I've always wanted to direct a thriller, and I've had this project sort of for a while now that I haven't been able to move forward the way I wanted to, because I was obviously doing Love Sarah, and I have 3 children, and we're homeschooling, and everything is sort of up in the air at the moment. But I finally found my creativity back, and I'm really excited. I'm working on a documentary at the moment. I'm working on a children's movie, and I'm working on this thriller. So I'm trying to do 3 different things.
How important do you think it is to push conventions like you do in this film? Just not in terms of, getting it out there, but I mean, getting it out there for people to see and to be able to have movies like this be able to rise to the top, because we live in such a day and age when there are so many options for to watch.
So you mean how important is it for me for people to
Sort of
see it?
make stories that are, familiar but different all at the same time, because I think that's the best way to describe Love Sarah.
I'm really glad that you see it this way, and I hope many people will. I think it's really important to, you can always have a recipe, but I think you should try and surprise the audiences with something that is special about it, that is deeper about it, that matters a little bit more. Or, there's so many amazing filmmakers out there who sort of follow a certain recipe, and I was always trying until the very end. I was trying to push the drama quite a lot. So we had this really interesting dynamic between writer and producer, who were a great sort of part of the team, and myself, and we were always sort of battling in a positive way, but we were always having this battle about drama and comedy / romance, and the two always wanted to keep it much lighter, and I wanted always to bring it down and make it darker. And I guess in the end, what I was trying to do is that people really have to, I wanted people to after having their tears, I wanted them to earn their laughter.
Right.
I wanted to make it, I wanted it to matter, the loss, because I've experienced it myself. So I definitely wanted to bring that across.
No, and it's one of those things that, especially when it comes to loss and grief, like art and people will try to quantify it, but you can't. And it comes out in so many different and so many complex ways. And I mean, I think this is really sort of the beauty of Love Sarah, because again, it's familiar, but it's unexpected. It's one of those things that, I mean, I'm a guy. I'm not supposed to get into a romantic comedy. It's not, you're not, I'm not the audience for this film, but I genuinely enjoyed it.
That's amazing to hear. I'm really happy about that. Yeah, I think hopefully there's something in there for, I was always hoping to make a film where, for example, maybe an older woman would sit in the cinema originally, but of course now at home, and feel very connected to to Shannon, who plays Clarissa. So I wanted to create something across the generations where maybe you find a little something in one of the characters, not necessarily the character of your age group, where you would say, oh, I can sort of relate to that.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's one of those things that I think will speak across generation lines, across gender lines. And just to finally put a bow on this, Because this is a food movie, I gotta ask a silly question just to end on it. What's your favorite food movie?
And I really love the film No Reservations.
Okay.
Um, and there is actually one of my favorite films ever, but you might not know it, is a film called Mostly Martha, which is
Oh,
actually a
okay.
German film. And it's a very cute, yeah, film shot in Hamburg, and I come from Hamburg in Germany, and and I've always loved that film because it has the sort of the love for the kitchen and for food, and at the same time it has a really sort of deep, meaningful sort of grieving experience and story. So it's powerful.
And you know what? I love that you say that because I have seen that movie and I definitely see a little bit of that in yours. And just thank you again for the time today. I really appreciate this.
Well, thank you very much. Have a lovely day, and thanks for talking to me.
No, Thad, thanks for talking to me.
All right, great. Speak soon.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.